Hey, you guys, this is Josh
And Carolyn.
with Homesteading Family, and welcome to this week's episode number 6 of the Pantry Chat.
All right.
And the main topic today is how to homestead with a lack of land or on a small parcel. That was, I think, number 5.
Yeah, top
challenges
number 5.
that you guys have told us about, and completely understandable. Most folks are on a small holding, but you want to be able to do something where you're at.
Right? Exactly. So we'll get into that in just a minute. But this week, what are you up to?
He's nervous. I'm preparing. I'm nervous. Carolyn's taking a trip and going to be gone nearly a week, and she's leaving the kids with me. I think she's brave.
One of us is brave. I don't know which, but
so
yeah.
I don't know, a little extra meditation, a little extra prayer, or getting organized,
right.
Getting some things organized, getting ready. We're gonna have fun.
Yeah, the kids are really excited to get dad time, but leaving him alone with 9 kids to homeschool and feed and everything else is a big undertaking. So you're mentally preparing and I'm physically preparing.
You mean you're not leaving me a bunch of pizza in the refrigerator?
Well, I'm coming as close as we do to that.
You realize these are going to be empty when you get home.
I hope not.
That's my solution. Especially this time of year.
I've been stocking up the shelf. So we got some chili this last week.
I see some of that great potato.
We got
the
loaded potato soup.
Wow,
and we've got a hearty beef and vegetable soup up there. And we're doing sloppy joes in a jar this week. So we're getting all set up, and I will leave you with lots of jars of food in the refrigerator too, ready to feed everybody.
I love it. This is, healthy, happy convenience food on the homestead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. It's easy, but it's super healthy as well.
Yeah.
Everybody loves it. Hopefully
we know
you'll leave
every
us some
ingredient in that jar.
You're going to leave us some bread, right? Of course, we've got a couple girls that'll probably
girls will
help
make some
with that.
bread,
And to have some bread and butter.
We've got some
with
apple
that.
Pie filling sitting right up here for you, so I'm sure you can even wrangle
We're actually going to be living large while she's gone, I think. Yeah.
I think you'll do okay.
Yeah,
I'll be the one missing out. I'll be nervous traveling. I mean, airport food. You want to, I'll be wishing for our home cooked food around here.
Yeah. So what about you? What are you up to?
Just, pretty much this, getting everything ready, getting that larder stocked up, both because of all of the moves we've had this year. We've really run the shelves down, the pantry shelves down, so we didn't have to move so many full jars, and so we ended up with not as much food as I like on the shelves going into winter.
You're doing great, though. You are catching them back up.
We are catching them back up, so we're doing batches of 19 quarts at a time and doing big canning batches and starting to fill up these shelves. So that's been a big focus of mine just this entire winter, but really the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So.
All right, cool. Well, we're going to miss you.
Yeah.
But glad you get to take this trip.
Yeah,
so.
Thank you. I'm excited. It'll be a lot of fun. So
we've got, we're trying to do a couple questions, 1 or 2 questions every week from one of you guys. So what do you got?
This is one, I get a version of this question on email all the time, and I just love it. It really hits my mama heart right at home, So this one says, "Hi, Carolyn. I am a homeschooling mom of 4. 3 of my children are still very young. How do you schedule your time in the kitchen and your homeschooling? I usually do school first thing in the morning, but then I find myself scrambling to get all my cooking and preserving done later. I was thinking I need to do some in the morning and the afternoon and then again in the evening and do more of our school stuff after time in the kitchen. Tips, please. Also, what do you do with your toddlers while you're in the kitchen? You must spend time planning ahead. How do you do that? Anyways, some questions from a desperate mom."
Wow.
Yeah.
It's very challenging.
It is very challenging, and I love that question because there's the heart of a mom desperately trying to take care of her family, right?
Absolutely.
They're trying to provide the best food, the best education, everything they can. And it's hard. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work in a lot of different directions.
Well, and it is in this day and age to live this lifestyle and be trying to do all these things. It's just challenging no matter what.
Yeah. There's a lot of demands on our time and our energy. And so I think for us, back especially when we just had little kids, now we have a lot of older kids who are becoming big helpers.
Very helpful. Yeah, they help the house run actually at this point. They're in that positive.
They do a
big
lot.
Contributors.
But we made a real point when we had little kids to slow down, do less, and let them help.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's hard to do because you feel like you should be doing all of these different things that, you know, you've got on your plate, on your to-do list. But slowing down and making it enjoyable for the little guys, letting them help, letting them get in the kitchen with you. The baby in our house is always sitting on the counter, helping, you know, put the veggies we've chopped into a pot, do something like that. The toddlers are always on stools, pulled right up at the counter. The first kitchen lesson they get is not to touch the knives and not to put their hands on any part of a cutting board so that they can be there with us while we're working and they can do it safely. So slowing down, not doing as much, but making it enjoyable for them ends up building helpers in the long run.
Oh,
right?
It does. Yeah, it's really an investment.
It is.
It really, you're investing in them in ways that just give back to them for years, for the rest of their life. And they're learning to be a part of what you're doing. And it's hard because it's messy a lot of times.
It is messy.
And but eventually they're just in the flow and they go from you know, having to clean up behind them and getting in the way to all of a sudden they're beside you. They're really contributing, working alongside. And
then one day you're going to be able to say, hey, I'm going to take care of this. Can you go ahead and make the bread today right here next to me? And they're going to be able to do it because they've been doing it with you all the way along. And so, you know, really an investment is the right word there. Yeah. You're making an investment in the future. But my number 2 big tip that was really important for both of us when our kids were all little is to implement a household quiet time. Whether your children are still taking naps or if they've gotten a little older, it's worth the time spent training them to take a few hours in the middle of the day and sit quietly with a book or take a nap or rest or have some quiet activities where they're kind of self-sufficient. That way you can either put your feet up with a cup of tea and take that break that you need, or take some planning time, or do some of the projects that you just really can't get done with the little kids under your feet. I know one that I never wanted the little kids involved in was making soap because of the lye, and I didn't want their hands getting into that. So I would always wait till nap time and have my quiet time at nap time and be able to get a few of those projects done. So take heart, it won't last forever that you have little kids. You're doing great, and just try not to get too much on your list that you're scrambling.
And I think the midday, I just wanted to emphasize that I've watched you do is that midday quiet time.
Right.
Because that you just need that break right there. So somewhere after lunch, little ones need to nap anyways. Older kids can do school or read or go outside and play. A lot of times we find some of the bigger kids, they need to get out and exercise in, you know, PE as it were.
Yeah.
And then that gives you time to recuperate or focus on a project that you need to focus on without them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just keep in there. You're doing a great job.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's see. We better move along here to the topic of the day.
All right.
And that is dealing with a lack of land. So you're wanting a homestead, you know, in the lifestyle sense of it, and growing some of your own food. I think is what a lot of this question is based around. A little more outside. What do I do with a little bit of land? Obviously, I can't have a cow or a sheep, but maybe I can garden a little bit. How do we work with that?
Right.
And you know, there's a lot of people trying to do that, and we'll get into some specific details. But one thing that I think we both would really want to encourage you in and that is to go and study permaculture.
Right.
That has been very helpful to us.
So what is permaculture?
So a lot of people think that permaculture is just a way of gardening, right? And it is. It has to do with taking care of the soil and raising plants and planting different things together. But it's really a design and management philosophy, ethic, way of doing things that helps you make the most of your resources in a sustainable way, in an
Okay.
ethical way, so taking care of what we have, but in a manner that's producing for ourselves as well.
Right.
So it's an overall way of thinking and approaching working with the land so that we are making the most of it, producing as much as we can, but within a healthy context. So we're also hopefully improving the land.
Okay.
And those actually work together. That almost seems like there'd be a contradiction to be able to improve the soil, to improve the landscape, and harvest more and do more with a little bit of space. But actually, nature is such, creation is such that when you take care of what you have, it becomes healthier, more abundant, and you can actually do more with less.
Absolutely.
And so just look up permaculture a little bit. A great starter book is An Introduction to Permaculture by Bill Mollison.
Okay.
Just to get your head around what is it, because it's more than gardening, it's a way of thinking, and some of the things we're going to talk about right here really come from a permaculture mindset.
Right. So just to be clear, can you apply permaculture principles without a garden?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
it really, gardening is part of permaculture.
And
but
a
it's
large
not what
part of it.
Permaculture is, really.
Really, and a large part of it, because it is centered around taking care of the land.
Right.
Right, because all resources that we have, everything comes from the land.
Right.
But you can apply the thinking to organization of space, to organization of your own time.
Right.
It's actually very economic if you dive into it. It mimics sound economics. So yeah, it's a great paradigm,
Okay.
if you will, of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So, so take that. Let's get into a few of the details that are really applicable.
Okay.
And what are some things you can do? So, obviously, if you've got a small piece of land, you're not going to have large animals. So you're probably going to be gardening. You're going to be growing food. Maybe a few small animals. We'll get to that in a minute, but probably growing food. So, what are some steps that we can do to grow the most amount of food on a small piece of land? Right.
Right. Yeah.
And soil, one.
Yeah, if
We
you
talked about that
didn't-
last week.
Yeah, if you didn't watch last week's episode,
Yeah.
you may want to go back and watch that. And in the description, we'll have a link for you guys for the download, the free download for what do we call it?
5 steps to
a healthy garden.
Yeah, 5 steps to a healthy garden.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's a great place to
Yeah.
start with that.
And so you've got to improve your soil. If you're going to create abundance in a little amount of space, your soil is key.
Right.
And that's step one. But then we can start to add some strategies, right, specifically for a small area. So one, top of the list here is you're probably going to want to grow intensively. You're going to want to learn how to grow more in a small space, which goes back to the soil.
You can grow an incredible amount of food in a very, very small
Absolutely.
space. And
Yep.
we have done that multiple times when we've had either space constrictions and been in small spaces, or we've had energy constrictions and we've only been able to focus on a small amount of land.
Or even a new piece of land, and we had large space, but there was so much going on to settle the ground
Right.
that we were doing big gardens, but we also wanted some smaller gardens that were just highly productive. So I took in the one, I think, area that you're referring to,
Right.
we took a bed that was 4 by 8 foot, so 32 square feet.
Okay.
And I think, what did we produce? Was that 80
I-
pounds?
We were eating greens off of that for week after week for our large family, and then we started selling greens
Yeah.
because we could not keep up. Now, this was just one of the beds that we had. I think we had 3 different beds going, and in
That's-
this one bed, we couldn't stop eating out of it. It was producing so much, so we started selling greens, and we sold 80 pounds. And we know that we did 80 pounds because we were selling them,
We
so
sold
we
that
were
by the
weighing
pound.
them. But that was after we had eaten off of them for weeks.
And that was leafy greens.
That
It
was
wasn't
leafy
like
greens.
tomatoes or cucumbers or
You would
beans.
harvest a whole section one day, and the next day you'd
Right.
come back and you could barely even tell it had been harvested.
So that was a very intensive manner of gardening. You
Right.
don't necessarily want to garden everywhere like that, but in a small space, when you're improving soil, you can learn to garden intensively.
Right.
And that was also just one layer. So the next idea, and in permaculture, there's
Wait, can I jump in on
Sure.
that for just
Yeah.
one more second? The real key to doing that is, we're saying improve your soil. When you're gardening that intensively, you're almost having to put brand new soil into those garden beds every growing cycle.
You're adding an inch of very high quality compost
Right.
every growing cycle. So we grew in that bed, we probably planted 3 times that year. And so, yes, you're adding high quality compost every single seeding, planting,
because
and
those
tending
plants
to the soil.
are just sucking out all of that nutrition. You have so many plants in such a small space that it's really harvesting all of the nutrition in that soil. So you have to get a lot of nutrition back in order to maintain that kind of success.
Right.
So just when we say improve your soil, we're serious about that for that kind of intensive gardening.
Well, that is the key, especially again on a small land.
Yeah.
You know, we want to be doing that really anywhere, but you can apply different garden methods depending on the type of soil you have, and as you're working to improve it, there's different ways that you can have a planting strategy for this intensive planting in a small space. The quality of your soil is really everything.
And that's where for that kind of small space, something like a raised bed can be really helpful.
Very helpful,
right?
Yep.
Because you're able to just control your soil that much more. And so those small, super intensive spaces can be really good as a raised bed.
Yep. So another tip to build on to this is to grow vertically.
Yes.
And that is to grow crops that can grow vertically and harvest, not necessarily spread out over the ground. Tomatoes, indeterminate tomatoes, cucumbers, a lot of your squashes even, will vine and grow up, so you can create a trellis and you can grow vertically. If it's heavier, like squashes, you're going to have to find a way to hold them up while they're maturing.
Net them up or something.
Right, net them up or tie them up. But
melons would be the same.
Melons, right. You can grow vertically. Of course,
beans. You get your pole beans and your peas
and
different things that can go up.
Yep. So you need some infrastructure. You need a wall. You need a trellis. You know, you can make your own, or you can buy some cattle panels. Are great. We use those a lot. You can even create some tunnels. With the cattle panels for items to grow on.
And then they look pretty too.
Right. So you're getting a harvest by going vertically, by going up. You can still plant, again, your soils, you've got to really be working with your soil, but you can still then plant at the bottom of those. You can even, a lot of those vining, you can trim up a little bit to let some sunlight in, and then you can plant some lower growing leafy greens, different plants at the base of them. And so now you're getting multiple use. You're going dense, but you're also going up.
Okay. Good. So making the most out of your space.
Exciting stuff, right? And we call this in permaculture, we call it stacking. You're starting to stack functions, and just good stuff. So let's see, what's another strategy we have here?
Working not only with your annuals, but sneaking in your perennials, your trees and your bushes all along the edges, and that's great. That's especially useful if you're growing in an urban environment where maybe you've got HOA laws or different regulations on what you can and can't grow. A lot of times, who's going to say that a blueberry bush looks like anything but an ornamental bush, right? They still look pretty. So you can sneak those in all over the place and they look good. Nobody says, oh, look, they're growing an annual garden in their front yard. And so you don't put up the red flags that you might if you were to stick row crops in.
Absolutely. And also in a small space, you're going to maybe have some problem areas. You've got high fence, not everywhere's getting enough sun for some of your crops. So a corner with a fruit tree fills that spot real well. It might even take perennial bushes underneath it.
Okay.
Or one thing that I've done for fun is planting lettuces cool. If you're in a hot area, you have a tree growing, a fruit tree, you can then plant some of your cooler season plants under the tree. And you're starting to use the different layers of space to achieve a harvest.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Let's see here.
Small animals.
Yeah, small animals.
There are some things that you can do a lot of animals in a small space, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of places, even if you're in the city, you can sneak a few hens in either under the radar. I didn't say that on record. or a lot of laws are starting to change, and a lot of places are now starting to allow a few hens in urban environments, right?
Or a few rabbits.
Now, rabbits are a lot easier because you can call them a pet. So a lot of people can get away with rabbits if they can't get away with any other farm animals, right?
Yeah.
So
you might even be able to do a few ducks. And those all also have their place in that tight garden. Chickens can go and scratch and eat bugs. You don't want them in your small starts, but in more mature gardens, they can get in there. Ducks will do the same. Ducks will help with slugs. If you're in a wet area, they'll help with certain things. You could use rabbits if you've got grass areas in your pathways. So again, we're starting to include them in the system, not just their own little
Right.
box over here. And of course, all of those can produce manure, which you can then use to compost or add to your garden.
Right. So you kind of get
Which
this
is
whole
improving
cycle,
soil,
right?
right? Yeah.
Which is back to improving that soil.
Absolutely.
Always about the soil. The
Yeah.
soil is important.
And just to give you an example, we were telling you about some garden beds we've had. There's a family in Pasadena that regularly grows over 6,000 pounds of vegetables on an urban lot. It's like 1/10 of an acre.
Wow.
So this can be done. What we're telling you is this isn't myth. We're not just speaking from being on a large homestead and saying, oh, we just know you can do this. People are doing this, and this is just somebody that's out there. It's called the Urban Homestead. You can Google them and go check them out. I think they've got a movie in their story.
Okay.
And really, really cool. But that just tells you what you can do. 6,000 pounds.
That is a lot of food.
You know, I didn't do the math on that, but for 4 people, I know they're growing enough to feed their family and sell surplus to some of the local restaurants.
And that's on just a tiny bit of land. So
Right.
you can absolutely produce a lot of food on a very small space, right?
And, you know, it's really important to build skills where you're at. Maybe you're on that urban spot and you're just going to make the most of it. Maybe you're working to get out there to a larger piece of land one day. But either way, you want to work with what you have and fully utilize everything that you have.
Right.
That's going to make it so much easier when you do step to a larger piece of property to make that transition. And if you don't plan to, just, I mean, how cool is that to be able to turn that your little piece of the world, that piece of ground, into just super productive, nutrient dense food and good living.
Right, and you're going to hear this over and over again, and you already have as you've been watching the Pantry Chats, that you really need to focus on developing the skills that you can right where you're at. You really don't want to move ahead, move on to a larger piece of property until you have the skills dialed in to exist well on the piece of property that you have.
Right.
Even if it's a small yard, you know what? That is a great place to start. That is a prime, ideal place to start.
It is the place to start.
It really
is right where you're at. And we're going to talk about, well, I think next week, real soon here, you know, what is homesteading and what does that look like? What does it look like if you're living in the urban environment? Does that mean because you're in an urban environment you can't homestead?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a fun discussion, but you can embrace the mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of our challenges that we see that we have are all about perspective. It is so important to do what you can with what you have right now and turn that perspective from a challenge or this is a problem into this is a benefit and what can I do with it right now and be solution oriented, right?
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's just another key thought to permaculture thinking.
Yeah, that's
right,
definitely
is being
true.
solution oriented. We all have problems, but we need to learn to dwell on the solution more. And there's tons of solutions right in front of us, right where we are.
Because I guarantee you that when you get out to that bigger piece of property that you're dreaming of, that has its own set of problems and challenges.
And solutions.
And solutions. And so everywhere you go, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems just like you have problems now and challenges to getting done what you want to get done. But you're also going to have solutions. And I think, we'll probably be talking about this next week when we're talking about what is homesteading, that a lot of what the homesteading mentality is how do I solve the problem that I have in front of me with what I have on hand, the resources that I have available? And that is actually, you're learning an entire skill set when you start switching your thinking from, well, I can't do this because I don't have this, to how can I make this work with what I have?
Right.
That is a whole skill set all on its own.
Well, and it's a critical skill set
Right.
as you move up in scale.
Right.
And as if you're going to move into that lifestyle and become more dependent on it, where your food, your fuel, whatever different aspects of your life, you're depending on your own production.
Right.
That mentality is critical. It's
absolutely.
essential.
Yeah.
And it's part of the homesteading mindset. So, but we're getting short on time.
Okay.
And we wanted to cover one other area. So most of this idea of the lack of the land is outside the home. What do I do with a small piece of ground?
Right.
But with that, it's a journey to get to producing a lot, to producing 6,000 pounds, like we were talking about the urban homestead.
Right.
But there are things you can do inside the home that are still gathering that, they're helping develop that mentality. Do you have just a few tips before we run out of time on that?
Well, definitely before you can ever get to even handling the thousands of pounds that you could possibly be producing in your small space, you need to understand how to handle food when it comes into your house. You know,
Yeah.
so the first step to all of this is learning some preservation techniques, learning how to store bulk food that you're bringing in. And I've got to say that people who are on 40 acres, 100 acres, I know a lot of them who are actually much less food secure than some people who are in small urban lots, because they don't have some of these fundamental steps down of storing food, knowing how to bulk store food, buy food in bulk, how to make use of the buying resources that they have around them, like the farmers markets or farms or different producers. And just because you move onto land does not guarantee food security in any way.
Well, and it's that prepper mentality sometimes can go too far one way. Well, I'll just have land, I'll just have seeds, I'll just stockpile these things, and land can be one of those things.
Right.
And if it ever goes bad, I'll use them. I'll pull out the seeds and put them in the ground. It don't work that way. It does
just not that
not work that way. You've got to be building the skills now, whether you're doing it for health reasons now, whether you're doing it for whatever the future might hold. It's not enough to just have the land, to just have seeds on the shelf, to just have the canner packed away somewhere.
Right.
You've got to be building the skills now, and you can do that right where you're at.
Right. So starting with that healthy cooking, the food preservation, and the bulk buying in the house and storing are just great places to start.
Yep, sure are. So that kind of wraps it up for today. We're going to take a little different direction next week.
Right.
Which I'm excited about.
Because we've covered the top five
challenges, right. And you guys send us your questions, because we're going to keep doing this. So we'll keep coming back and addressing some of them. But we're going to hit the topic here, specifically, what is homesteading?
Right.
We get some interesting questions about, what is homesteading, how is it different now than it was 100 years ago, and so we're going to look at traditionally, and
what is homesteading?
From historical and even from the dictionary definition, what is homesteading versus what do we mean today, and how are people referring to it today in this context?
Right.
I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Don't forget to grab your download of the top 5 steps to a healthy
garden. Sorry, we should know that, right?
I should know what it's called. Yep. But that's down in the description, so grab it now.
Yep.
And we'll see you next week.
See you soon.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.